So I just sold my I bonds and advise clients to do the same. In this video, I want to talk about why I sold it and why you might consider selling as well, and maybe why some people might consider holding their I bonds in this environment. My name is Scott Caulfield. I'm a CPA and CFA charter holder and the founder of Sophos Wealth Management. So back during COVID, I bonds were about as much of a no-brainer as anything you could find. Early on, when inflation was ramping higher, I bonds started to yield 7.12%. That's when I was advising them to clients. That's when I purchased that first chunk of I bonds. And I mean, 7.12%, you're almost talking about equity-like returns. Now that jumped even higher to 9.62%. So really a no-brainer. Love those purchases there. But things have obviously changed a lot. Inflation has come down significantly. The rates on I bonds reset every 6 months. So once my last attractive rate of 6.48% rolled off, it no longer really made sense for me to hold. The last inflationary reset put my I bonds at 3.38%. Very unattractive given that short-term treasury bills are currently yielding close to 5.4%. Now, when you sell your I bond, you're going to give up 3 months of interest if it's within the first 5 years. So that was definitely a consideration for me. But that rate reset from 3.38% to only 3.94%. So that would have been what I would have earned the following 6 months. I could give up 3 months of interest at under 4%, and you're talking about less than 1%. Which, given the fact that those short-term T-bills are over 5%, I'm going to make up I'm going to make that up over the course of the year, and potentially substantially more if that kind of rate differential stays where it is. Now, it's important to note though that I bonds have two components to the return. You have the inflation, and then you have a fixed rate. When those yields were really attractive back in 2021 and 2022, the fixed rate was 0. So the only interest you're earning on those bonds is basically whatever the prevailing inflation rate is. However, and this is where some people may consider holding on to their bonds, sometimes those fixed rates can be quite attractive. In fact, most recently, the fixed rate is 1.3%. So I bonds purchased today are actually yielding 5.27%. Not far off where those short-term T-bills are, and that makes them far more competitive and interesting. If you go all the way back to when I bonds were first being issued, so we're talking about the late 90s here, I bonds the fixed rate was as high as 3.4, 3.6%. I mean, I think anytime that fixed rate is over 2%, that makes a pretty attractive purchase. That's going to be basically a guaranteed 2% real return, 2% plus whatever the prevailing inflation rate. So some of those bonds purchased in the late 90s, during 21 and 22, they were yielding over 13%, which is pretty crazy. But for the bonds purchased when I purchased them, we got a 0% fixed rate. So if I'm only getting 3.38 and the future would have been 3.94%, that's not very attractive to me. So that tranche of bonds that I had purchased back at that 7.12% rate back in 2021, I went ahead and sold because I don't really think it makes sense as a hold anymore. That being said, it's hard to predict the future. Where's interest rates going to be? What are short-term rates going to be? I can certainly see the argument for people kind of wanting to hold on a little bit longer and see, who are willing to kind of earn a little bit less and don't want to give up that 3/4 of interest. If you are giving up those 3/4 of interest though, I would advise being strategic about it. Try to do it. Make sure you're doing it when the bond resets to the lower rate and you've earned 3 months of that lower rate, which is part of why I wanted to wait for mine and sold in January of 24. I hope this was helpful. Always encourage you to check out my website. Lots of good information there. And please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thanks a lot.